The world flickered like a glitchy screen, and suddenly, I was here, not in my cramped apartment, scrolling through a BL novel at 2 a.m., but standing in a bustling New York City street, the scent of hot pretzels and exhaust sharp in my nose. My name was no longer Ethan Lee, 28-year-old barista with a penchant for bad decisions, but Caleb Wren, a nobody in a story I'd read a dozen times. I wasn't supposed to be here. In Hearts and Neon, Caleb Wren was a background character, a barista at Brewed Awakening, mentioned maybe twice in the 500-page novel. My job was to serve coffee to the protagonists, Julian Carter and Noah Ellis, two star-crossed lovers whose epic romance drove the plot. Julian, the brooding artist with a tragic past, and Noah, the charming lawyer fighting for justice, were destined to overcome every obstacle, family disapproval, a scheming ex, even a near-fatal accident, to be together. I, Caleb, was just a prop, a nobody. So why the hell was I standing in Caleb's body, watching Julian Carter himself storm into the cafe, his dark eyes blazing with an intensity that made my borrowed heart skip? Caleb, black coffee now, Julian snapped, tossing a crumpled $5 bill onto the counter. His voice was low, rough, like he'd been shouting all night. In the book, he was described as tall, with sharp cheekbones and a perpetual scowl that melted only for Noah. But the Julian in front of me looked unhinged. His leather jacket was scuffed, his dark hair a mess, and there was a bruise blooming on his jaw. This wasn't the polished artist from Chapter 1. Something was wrong. I fumbled with the coffee machine, my hands, Caleb's hands, shaking. Sure, coming right up. My voice sounded foreign, higher pitched than my own. I glanced around the cafe, expecting Noah to stride in, all charm and tailored suits, to calm Julian down. That's how it went in the book. But the door stayed shut. No Noah, just Julian, glaring at me like I'd personally ruined his day. Where's Noah? I blurted, unable to stop myself. In the story, they were inseparable by now, their chemistry electric. But Julian's scowl deepened, and he leaned over the counter, his voice a dangerous whisper. You know him? He asked, eyes narrowing. How? My stomach dropped. Caleb Wren wasn't supposed to ask questions. He wasn't supposed to know Noah. I scrambled for an excuse, the coffee machine hissing behind me. I just heard you mention him before. Regular customer, right? Julian didn't buy it. He grabbed my wrist, his grip firm but not painful. Don't play dumb, Caleb. I saw you talking to him yesterday. What did he tell you? Yesterday? I hadn't been here yesterday. I'd been in my own world, eating instant ramen and cursing my Wi-Fi. But before I could respond, the cafe door swung open, and a woman stormed in. Lila Voss, Noah's ex-girlfriend, the novel's resident villain. In the book, she was a manipulative heiress who tried to sabotage Julian and Noah's relationship. Her blonde hair was pulled into a tight bun, her designer coat pristine, but her eyes were wild, like she was one step away from unraveling. Julian, we need to talk, she said, ignoring me entirely. It's about Noah. Julian released my wrist, his attention snapping to her. What about him? His voice was raw, desperate. Not the cool, controlled Julian from the novel. This was a man on the edge. Lila glanced at me, her lip curling. Not in front of the help. I bristled, but stayed silent. Caleb Wren was invisible, after all, just a background character. But as I poured Julian's coffee, my mind raced. This wasn't how the story was supposed to go. Julian and Noah were supposed to be flirting over lattes by now, not fighting through proxies. And why was Lila here so early? Her big sabotage didn't happen until Chapter 20. The timeline was all wrong. I handed Julian his coffee, our fingers brushing for a split second. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw something. Grief, maybe, or fear. Not the untouchable artist I'd read about. Watch yourself, Caleb, he muttered before turning to Lila. Let's go. They left, and I stood there, heart pounding. I was in over my head. I wasn't just a background character anymore. Something had shifted, and the story I knew was unraveling. Fast. The rest of my shift passed in a blur. Customers came and went, but my mind was elsewhere. How had I ended up in Caleb's body? Was this a dream? A glitch? I pinched myself hard enough to bruise, but the world didn't fade. The cafe's warm lights, the hum of conversation, the ache in my feet, it was all real. Too real. After closing, I locked up and stepped into the chilly Brooklyn night. Caleb's apartment, according to the novel, was a tiny studio a few blocks away. I followed the route instinctively, my new body moving like it knew the way. The city buzzed around me, taxis honking, neon signs flickering, people laughing as they spilled out of bars. But I felt like an imposter, wearing Caleb's skin, his life. When I reached the apartment, I froze. The door was ajar. In the book, Caleb's place was barely mentioned, a nondescript backdrop. No break-ins, no drama. I pushed the door open, my pulse racing. The studio was small, cluttered with books and half-finished sketches. Wait, sketches? Caleb wasn't an artist. That was Julian's thing. I picked up a drawing from the desk. It was a pencil sketch of two men, their faces blurred but their hands intertwined. One had Julian's sharp jawline, the other Noah. My breath caught. Why would Caleb have this? I rummaged through the desk, finding more sketches, each one more intimate than the last. Hands brushing, eyes locked, lips inches apart. My hands shook as I realized what I was holding. Evidence that Caleb wasn't just a background character. He was connected to Julian and Noah in a way the novel never mentioned. A noise from the hallway snapped me out of it. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate. I shoved the sketches into a drawer and grabbed a kitchen knife, my heart hammering. "Who's there?" I called, trying to sound braver than I felt. The door creaked open, and Noah Ellis stepped inside. In the book, he was described as effortlessly charming, with jet black hair and piercing blue eyes that could disarm anyone. But the Noah in front of me looked exhausted, his tie loosened, his shirt rumpled. "Caleb," he said, his voice soft but urgent. "We need to talk." I lowered the knife, my mind spinning. About what? He closed the door behind him, his eyes scanning the room like he expected someone else to be there. "Julian, he's in trouble, and I think you're the only one who can help." Noah's words hung in the air like a storm cloud about to burst. I stared at him, the kitchen knife still clutched in my hand, its weight grounding me in this surreal moment. Julian in trouble? That wasn't supposed to happen. Not yet. Not like this. "Help him how?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Noah ran a hand through his hair, pacing the small studio like a caged animal. The dim light from a single lamp cast shadows across his face, highlighting the worry etched into his features. "Caleb, I know you've been watching us," he said, stopping to face me. His blue eyes were sharp, cutting through the haze of my confusion. "Don't pretend you haven't. I saw you sketching us at the cafe. You've seen things you shouldn't have." My stomach twisted. The sketches. How could I explain that I hadn't drawn them? That I'd only been in Caleb's body for a day? "I don't know what you're talking about," I lied, setting the knife down. "I'm just a barista." Noah laughed, a bitter sound that didn't match the charming lawyer I'd read about. "You're not just anything. Julian trusts you. He doesn't trust anyone, not even me right now, and I need you to get through to him before it's too late." "Too late for what?" I pressed, my curiosity overriding my fear. In the novel, Noah was always in control, the one who held Julian together when the world tried to tear them apart. But this Noah was unraveling, his confidence frayed like the cuffs of his shirt. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Someone's after him. Lila's involved, but it's bigger than her. Julian's been digging into something he shouldn't. Something about his past, his family. He won't tell me everything, but he's scared, Caleb. I've never seen him like this." My mind raced. Julian's past in the novel was tragic, but vague. A car accident that killed his parents, leaving him to fend for himself. It was a plot device, not a mystery. But Noah's words hinted at something deeper, something the book never explored. And why was Noah coming to me? Caleb Wren was nobody, a background character with no lines in this scene. "I don't know how I can help," I said, stalling. "I barely know him." Noah's eyes softened, and for a moment, I saw the Noah from the novel, the one who could make anyone feel safe. "You don't have to know him. You just have to be there. He listens to you. I don't know why, but he does." I wanted to scream that I wasn't Caleb, that I was just Ethan, a guy who'd read their story and knew how it was supposed to end. But the way Noah looked at me, desperate and pleading, made me pause. Maybe I wasn't just a bystander anymore. Maybe, somehow, I'd been pulled into the heart of this story. "Fine," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Where is he?" Noah led me through the city, the night air sharp against my skin. We walked in silence, weaving through the crowded streets of Williamsburg, past graffiti-covered walls and hipster bars pulsing with music. Noah's shoulders were tense, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. I kept my eyes on him, trying to piece together what had gone wrong. In the novel, Julian and Noah were unbreakable, their love a force that defied every obstacle. But now, cracks were forming, and I was caught in the middle. We stopped at a small art gallery tucked between a deli and a vape shop. The sign read Neon Pulse, Julian's studio in the book. The windows were dark, but Noah pulled a key from his pocket and unlocked the door. Inside, the air smelled of paint and turpentine, and canvases lined the walls. Vivid, chaotic works that screamed Julian's style. But some were slashed, paint dripping like blood. "Julian," Noah called, his voice echoing in the empty space. No answer. My heart sank as I scanned the room. Broken brushes littered the floor, and a half-finished canvas lay toppled over, its colors smeared. "He was here an hour ago," Noah said, his voice tight. "He texted me, said he needed space. Then nothing." I moved deeper into the gallery, my eyes catching on a small sketch pinned to a corkboard. It was another drawing of two men, but this time, one of them was unmistakably Caleb, me. My freckled face, my messy brown hair, my hazel eyes. The other figure was Julian, his expression softer than I'd ever seen it. My breath hitched. This wasn't in the book. None of this was. "Noah, what's going on?" I asked, turning to him. "Why am I in his sketches?" Noah's jaw tightened. "I don't know. He's been obsessed with you for weeks. Keeps saying you're the key to fixing everything." I thought he was just stressed, but now he trailed off, his eyes darting to the slashed canvases. Before I could press further, a crash came from the back room. Noah was moving before I could blink, and I followed, my pulse pounding. The back room was a mess, boxes overturned, paper scattered. And there, slumped against the wall, was Julian. His face was pale, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. In his hand was a crumpled photo, too dark to make out. "Julian." Noah dropped to his knees, shaking him gently. "What happened?" Julian's eyes fluttered open, unfocused. "Noah, Caleb," his voice was weak, but his gaze locked onto me. You know, don't you?" "No what?" I asked, kneeling beside him. My heart was racing, but I forced myself to stay calm. This wasn't my story, but I was in it now. The truth, he whispered. About me. About us. Julian's words sent a chill down my spine. The truth? I was just a guy who'd read their story, not some oracle with answers. But the way he looked at me, his dark eyes pleading, made it clear he thought I was something more. I glanced at Noah, who was cradling Julian's face, his own expression a mix of fear and frustration. Stay with me, Julian, Noah said, his voice breaking. We need to get you cleaned up. I grabbed a rag from a nearby table and pressed it to the cut on Julian's forehead. He winced, but didn't pull away. The photo in his hand slipped to the floor, and I picked it up, my curiosity getting the better of me. It was old, faded, showing two boys, maybe 10 or 11, grinning at a carnival. One had Julian's sharp features, the other looked eerily like Caleb. Like me. Who is this? I asked, holding the photo up. Julian's eyes widened, and he snatched it back, his hands trembling. Where did you get that? He demanded, his voice sharper now. It fell, I said, raising my hands. Julian, what's going on? Why am I in your sketches? In this photo? Noah looked between us, confusion etched on his face. Caleb, what are you talking about? I hesitated. I couldn't tell them the truth, that I was Ethan, not Caleb, that I'd somehow transmigrated into their world. But the photo, the sketches, the way Julian kept staring at me, it was all wrong. The novel never mentioned Caleb having a history with Julian. I was supposed to be invisible, a nobody serving coffee in the background. Julian, talk to me, I said, softening my voice. You said I know the truth. What truth? He leaned back against the wall, his breath ragged. You were there, he said finally. When it happened. When my parents died. You saw everything. My blood ran cold. In the novel, Julian's parents died in a car accident when he was 12. A tragedy, but a closed case. No mention of Caleb. No mention of anyone else. I don't remember, I said carefully, playing along. Tell me what happened. Julian's eyes searched mine, like he was looking for a lie. We were kids. Best friends. You were in the car with us that night. You saw the other car, the one that hit us. It wasn't an accident, Caleb. Someone wanted them dead. Noah's head snapped up. Julian, what are you saying? You told me it was a drunk driver. It wasn't, Julian said, his voice breaking. I've been digging Noah. All these years, I thought it was my fault. But it wasn't. And Caleb, he was there. He knows. I felt like I was drowning. This wasn't in the book. None of it. The accident was a plot point, not a conspiracy. And Caleb, I, was never part of it. But Julian's conviction, the raw pain in his voice, made me question everything. Was the novel I'd read incomplete? Had Caleb's role been erased? We need to get you to a hospital, Noah said, pulling Julian to his feet. You're hurt, and you're not making sense. I'm fine, Julian snapped, but he swayed, leaning heavily on Noah. Caleb, you have to remember. You promised you'd never forget. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't Caleb, not really. But the weight of his words, the desperation in his eyes, made me want to help. I'll try, I said, my voice barely audible. But we need to get you safe first. Noah and I half-carried Julian out of the gallery, the night air biting at our skin. We took him to Caleb's apartment, the only place I could think of that felt safe. Noah cleaned Julian's wound while I made coffee, my mind racing. The story was collapsing, the neat arcs of hearts in neon twisting into something darker, more complex. And I was at the center of it. As Julian rested on the couch, Noah pulled me aside. What's going on with you two? He asked, his voice low. He's never talked about you like this before. Like you're important. I don't know, I admitted, my chest tight. I don't remember any of this. But he thinks I do, and I can't let him down. Noah's eyes softened, and he reached out, his hand brushing mine. You're not what I expected, Caleb. You're different. The touch sent a jolt through me, and for a moment, I forgot I was in someone else's body. Noah's gaze was intense, searching, and I realized with a start that this wasn't just about Julian. Noah was looking at me, like I mattered. But that was impossible. Noah loved Julian. Their romance was the heart of the story. Wasn't it? Noah's hand lingered on mine, his touch warm and grounding in the chaos of Caleb's tiny apartment. I pulled away, my heart racing, not because I didn't want it, but because I did, too much. This wasn't my story. I was Ethan, not Caleb, and Noah was Julian's, not mine. But the way he looked at me, like he saw something real, made me question everything I thought I knew about hearts and neon. Caleb, you okay? Noah asked, his voice soft. Julian was asleep on the couch, his breathing steady now, the cut on his forehead bandaged. The tension in the room had eased, but my mind was a storm. Yeah, I lied, turning to the kitchen to hide my face. Just trying to process all this. Noah followed me, leaning against the counter. You don't have to do this alone. Whatever Julian's mixed up in, I'm here. We're in this together. Together. The word hit me like a punch. In the novel, Noah and Julian were the ones who faced the world together, not me. But the novel was unraveling, its plotlines twisting into knots I couldn't untangle. Julian's talk of a conspiracy, Caleb's hidden past, the sketches, the photo, it was all wrong. And now Noah, with his piercing blue eyes and quiet strength, was looking at me like I was part of it. I need to know more, I said, keeping my voice low so as not to wake Julian. About Julian's parents. About me. What was I to him? Noah hesitated, his jaw tight. You were his best friend when you were kids. He told me that much. Said you two were inseparable until the accident. After that, you disappeared. He thought you moved away, but then you showed up at the cafe a few months ago, and it changed him. Changed him how? I pressed, my heart pounding. Caleb's life was a blank slate in the novel, a few lines about pouring coffee. But this, childhood friends, a shared trauma, was a whole new story. He started sketching you, Noah said, his voice tinged with something I couldn't place. Jealousy, maybe, or fear. Obsessively. Said you reminded him of what he'd lost. I thought it was just nostalgia, but now I don't know. He's convinced you're the key to figuring out what happened to his parents. I swallowed hard, my mind racing. If Caleb was tied to Julian's past, why wasn't it in the book? Had the author left it out? Or was this world different from the one I'd read? And why was I here, in Caleb's body, at the exact moment everything was falling apart? Before Noah could say more, Julian stirred, his voice groggy. Caleb, you're still here. I moved to the couch, kneeling beside him. Yeah, I'm here. How are you feeling? He sat up slowly, wincing. Like hell, but better, knowing you're not running. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw the Julian from the novel, the vulnerable artist who hid his pain behind a scowl. I need you to help me find the truth. About the accident. About us. Us. I echoed, my voice catching. Noah tensed behind me, and I felt the weight of his gaze. You were there, Julian said, his voice steady now. You saw the car. You saw the man driving it. I know you did. I wanted to scream that I hadn't, that I wasn't Caleb, that I didn't belong here. But the desperation in his eyes stopped me. Okay, I said softly. I'll help, but you need to tell me everything. Julian's story came out in fragments, each one more unsettling than the last. The accident wasn't random. His parents, both investigative journalists, had been working on a story about corruption in a powerful New York real estate firm, Voss Enterprises, Lila's family business. They'd been close to exposing something big when their car was run off the road. Julian, only 12, had survived, but his memories were hazy. All he knew was that Caleb, me, had been in the back seat, unharmed but silent, refusing to talk about what he'd seen. I thought you were dead, Julian said, his voice raw, or that you'd abandoned me. But then you came back, and I knew it wasn't over. I didn't know how to respond. I wasn't that Caleb. But the more Julian talked, the more I felt his pain, his need for answers. And Noah, sitting silently beside us, was watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. We need to find proof, Noah said finally. If Voss Enterprises was behind this, there's got to be something. Documents, witnesses, anything. Lila knows something, Julian said, his eyes darkening. She's been dropping hints, trying to keep me quiet. But I won't stop. Not now. I nodded, my resolve hardening. I didn't know why I was here, but I couldn't walk away. Not from Julian's pain, not from Noah's trust, not from the story that was rewriting itself around me. The next few days were a blur of tension and secrets. Julian, Noah, and I became an unlikely trio, bound by a shared mission to uncover the truth about the accident. We met in stolen moments, at the cafe after hours, in Julian's gallery, in Caleb's cramped apartment, poring over old articles, police reports, and cryptic notes Julian's parents had left behind. Every lead pointed back to Voss Enterprises, but we needed hard evidence, something Lila couldn't bury. I was still grappling with my role in this world. I wasn't Caleb, not really, but the lines were blurring. Julian's memories of our childhood, Noah's quiet trust, they were real to me now, anchoring me to this story. And the more time I spent with them, the more I felt the pull of something deeper. Julian's intensity, his raw vulnerability, drew me in like a moth to a flame. Noah's steady presence, his unexpected softness, made my heart ache in ways I didn't understand. I was a background character, but I was falling for them both. One night, we broke into Voss Enterprises' downtown office, a sleek glass tower that screamed money and power. Lila was out of town, giving us a narrow window. Noah picked the lock, a skill the novel never mentioned, and we slipped inside, our footsteps echoing in the dark. Julian led the way, his flashlight cutting through the shadows. There's a safe in her father's office, he whispered. If there's anything, it'll be there. We found the office on the top floor, a sterile space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. The safe was hidden behind a painting, just like in every cliché thriller. Noah worked on the lock while Julian and I searched the desk, our movements frantic but silent. My hands shook as I rifled through files, half expecting alarms to blare. Caleb, Julian said suddenly, his voice low. He was holding a photo, not the carnival one, but another, showing a man in a suit shaking hands with Lila's father. The man's face was familiar, though I couldn't place it. This is him, the driver. My heart stopped. The man in the photo wasn't just a driver. He was a hired fixer, someone Voss Enterprises used to clean up their messes. I didn't know how I knew, but the knowledge was there, like a memory that wasn't mine. We need to get this to the police, I said, my voice trembling. Noah cracked the safe, pulling out a stack of documents. Got it, he said, scanning them. Contracts, payments, it's all here. They paid him to stage the accident. Julian's face was pale, but his eyes burned with triumph. We did it, he whispered. We can end this. But before we could celebrate, the lights snapped on. Lila stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 security guards. Her smile was cold, predatory. You really thought I wouldn't know? She said, her voice dripping with disdain. Julian, you're as predictable as ever. Noah stepped forward, shielding us. It's over, Lila. We have proof. Her laugh was sharp, cutting. Proof? You have nothing. Just a sad little artist, a washed-up lawyer, and her eyes landed on me, narrowing. A nobody who's in way over his head. I bristled, but Julian grabbed my hand, his grip tight. He's not a nobody, he said, his voice fierce. He's the reason we're here. Lila's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. Take them, she ordered the guards. What happened next was chaos, shouts, a struggle, papers flying. Noah fought off one guard, but the other grabbed Julian, pinning him down. I acted on instinct, tackling the guard, my body moving faster than my mind. We hit the floor hard, and I scrambled to my feet, pulling Julian up. Noah grabbed the documents, and we ran, Lila's screams echoing behind us. We made it to a safe house no one knew, a rundown apartment in Queens. The documents were enough to expose Voss Enterprises, but we weren't safe yet. Lila's family had reach, and we were running out of time. As we caught our breath, Julian pulled me aside, his hand still holding mine. Caleb, he said, his voice soft but urgent. I don't know why you came back, but thank you. For everything. Before I could respond, he kissed me. It was brief, desperate, a collision of fear and longing. My heart stopped, then raced, as I realized what I'd been fighting all along. I loved him. And Noah, who was watching us now, his expression unreadable. Noah, I said, my voice breaking. He shook his head, stepping closer. Don't, he said softly. I see it too. I feel it. In that moment, the world shifted. The story I'd known was gone, replaced by something messier, more real. We weren't just characters anymore. We were people, bound by pain and love and the truth we'd fought for. Months later, Voss Enterprises was under investigation, Lila's family facing charges. Julian's parents got justice, and he started painting again, his work brighter, freer. Noah took on pro bono cases, fighting for others like us. And me? I was still Caleb, but I was also Ethan, carving out a place in a world that wasn't mine. We didn't have a neat ending. Julian, Noah, and I were a tangle of hearts, navigating something new, something undefined. But it was ours. And as we stood together in that quiet park, hands clasped under the street lamp, I knew I'd found my story, not as a background character, but as someone who mattered.